Hey everyone, it's been over 2 minutes and I haven't been raped yet, unlike our legal system. Hi, I'm Diana Davison, an advocate for the falsely accused and wrongfully convicted. As such, I've been studying the way that the media, and I hesitate to call them all journalists, the way the media has been reshaping our society, including our legal systems. Now, for those of you who think I've disappeared for a while, you're wrong. I've been writing for the Post-Millennial and I've been doing a podcast called Untrue Crime Investigations. I will put links below in the description. And now I finally got a new MacBook and iMovie, so I'm going back to doing videos. Because of some recent events, I've decided to revisit the phenomenon known as Gamergate to show how this hypocrisy and bias plays out in the media. To explain what Gamergate is, I'll put links in the video description below from people who are better versed in it with some source material, but for now, you just need to know this. A guy named Aaron Joney disastrously dated a woman named ZOE Quinn and published what's known as the ZOE post to stop her from hurting other people. Now, Quinn was a video game developer, and there was already some turmoil brewing with social justice warriors demanding that the gaming community engage in affirmative action for women and the rest of the alphabet soup. Now, the ZOE post went viral, mostly because it was heavily documented, and it unearthed what turned out to be an endless stream of incestuous relationships between game developers and journalists who covered their games. These friendships, of course, extended to how journalists reported on Aaron Joney and misreported his intentions with the ZOE post, and they demonized anyone who cared about Gamergate for any of the large number of reasons people needed to care. There was no attempt to address legitimate concerns from any of these groups. There was no accountability, and unlike the Me Too era, the person accused of unethical acts ended up advancing her career, while her victim was demonized. When ZOE Quinn was called out on her abusive behavior, she claimed to have been the actual victim herself. She reversed every single accusation and claimed that Joney had actually been abusing her instead, and then took legal action to silence him while getting her journalist friends to help her raise funding and control the media attention. Of course, in the Me Too era, anyone accused of abuse is instantly lambasted if they try to take legal action against their accuser, including a defamation suit. But in ZOE Quinn's case, not only did she take legal action, a protective order that she requested, she explicitly stated that she sought to silence his speech. Now, this is incredibly interesting because the threats that were being issued, and I'm not doubting that ZOE Quinn actually received some really graphic threats, none of those threats actually came from Aaron Joney, and he, in fact, was out on the internet pleading with people not to do that because it would take away from the real issues. So, her legal action actually served no other purpose than to make sure that she could lie about Aaron Joney and he would be unable to defend himself. In terms of power imbalances, ZOE Quinn stated in chat logs that were later released to the public that she has more than one multi-millionaire willing to throw money her way and that she'd spent 3 years building up these connections through favors for people in order to make those connections. So ZOE was the person with power in this relationship, and that was precisely what Aaron was afraid of, that she would abuse that power. Quinn had been promoting herself as a champion for women and social justice, because she'd already learned how victim narratives could benefit her. And just as Joney had feared, Quinn had a trail of broken and wounded left behind, both male and female, and none of that seems to have slowed her down. Though 5 years later, in August of this year, ZOE Quinn made allegations that led to her victim's suicide. Now, I say her victim confidently because the work that I and another writer named Anna Slatz did at Post-Millennial debunked her Me Too story, I think, fairly thoroughly. But to be honest, as I said in my first article about this, when the story first broke, anyone who read her allegation just in and of itself should have looked carefully, and they could have seen already that it was untrue. Without getting DMs, without getting her Twitter feed, it actually wasn't necessary. And that's important because we have to start reading allegations carefully and expecting people to do what Aaron Joney did, which is back it up with evidence before we #believe. There should be no hashtag there. You believe facts and evidence. Now, ZOE Quinn is a juggernaut of chaos the kind of person that the Me Too movement actively seeks to root out. But back to the ZOE post. It's a story of love and betrayal and emotional abuse. But as Erin Joni points out right from the beginning, it's also a question of what consent means. And that, of course, is what we're supposed to be talking about now in the Me Too era. Unlike the endless wave of Me Too allegations in which we're offered little to no evidence that the allegations are true, the ZOE post is laden with chat logs that are thoughtfully redacted to remove anything unnecessary to the real story. It was not Erin's indiscretion about publishing intimate details that was deemed to be calculated. It was his wry sense of humor. There is a difference between wit and malice. And this is where I want to move to an article posing as journalism, which didn't even need a fact checker to expose the bias. It was published by a Boston writer named Zachary Jason, dramatically titled Game of Fear. Now I'm going to start with a paragraph from page 2 of the online article, which you'll note has a lead declaring Erin to be a stalker. Months later, his slinking obsession compelled him to write Quinn what he called a giant email begging her to get back together with him. Slinking? Compelled. Readers need to start waking up to manipulative language. Though Joni stubbornly suspected Quinn had cheated on him while they were dating, he hoped to salvage their relationship. Stubbornly suspecting? She bloody well did it. It wasn't a suspicion. He actually busted her, and to this day, she's never denied that she cheated on him. So it wasn't a stubborn suspicion. It was fact. In a moment of weakness, she gave in and bought him a plane ticket from Boston to come see her in San Francisco, where she was at a games conference. Well, there's no weakness from ZOE Quinn. It was an effort from her to get Joni hooked back into their relationship. They had enjoyed San Francisco before, just 4 months earlier. In March, they'd attended the annual Games Developer Conference, where Joni sat in the audience while Quinn spoke on a panel about the sexist harassment she'd suffered as a female developer and discussed ways to counter online abuse. At this point, I'm kind of wondering if Zach Jason actually even read the ZOE post. But now, supposedly reconnecting, they spent little time together. After flying across the country, Joni sequestered himself in a public library and sat hunched over his laptop for an entire day, exchanging Facebook messages with Quinn, trying to convince the woman he had idealized to confess to an infidelity that she had repeatedly denied. He demanded that Quinn let him pry into her personal emails and social media accounts. Now, this can only have been written by somebody who was intentionally trying to reverse all the facts of the story in his investigation. And Jason has already written in the same paragraph that it was ZOE Quinn who bought Erin Joni the plane ticket. In the ZOE post, Joni talks about going to the library because after a drunken night of misery, he realized that she'd pretty much just confessed to cheating on him. And so on his way to see her, he changed his destination and went to the library. And it's hardly sequestering yourself in a public library. And though Quinn had repeatedly denied cheating, the fact was that she had lied to him and he caught her at this point in time. Now, Quinn ultimately confessed, and as I said before, she doesn't deny that she cheated. So I have no idea how this writer keeps putting this idea out that it was some sort of obsession, stalker-based suspicion, right? Or that, maybe cheating on him was a good idea to get rid of a stalker. This was ZOE Quinn begging Erin to understand why she had these infidelities and begging him to forgive her for it. So the whole dynamics of this thing is reversed, setting aside the fact that ZOE Quinn actually, I don't think, had any intention on ever repairing a relationship. She just wanted some guy who she could manipulate and control while she cheated on and slept with whoever else she wanted to. And this is why the court of public opinion cannot replace our legal system. I mean, Erin Joni's criticized for publishing a 10,000-word blog on his to state his case, as if the vast amount of words and evidence that he put online was somehow something to make him evil. Then a journalist comes along, ignores all 10,000 words, and puts up a provable false version of events. But that's accepted as truth by the majority of people because those two things, the ZOE post and Zach Jason's article in the Boston magazine, They're not side by side. Being on the internet doesn't put them next to each other, even if you can open them in different tabs on the same browser. So in a courtroom, you take all the evidence and you put it all in one place. And all the people who are reading one have to listen to the other side as well. On the internet, people are only reading the things that they want to hear, or the lies that people like Zach Jason are telling them. The only people who bothered to break down the facts in the case were basically people on YouTube. And those were people who cared about protecting their culture, the gamers. They wanted to protect it from dishonest journalism. And this is not something specific just to the gaming community. This is something that's going on in every industry now with the Me Too era, the Me Too allegations going on. They're slowly moving from one industry to another, attacking it. And we're stuck with smug bastard journalists like Ronan Farrow who deny us the evidence to know if what's being said is true. And they just say that we're supposed to trust them because they've reviewed it. So we cannot let dishonest journalism actually reshape our society with impunity. And that's what they got in Gamergate. It was largely about journalism, and the journalists were never held to account. Nothing changed. And now we can see the result. 5 years later, now journalists are doing the exact same thing in every other industry. And they're not just destroying individual people's lives. They are destroying our legal system. They're trying to use their court of public opinion rules, which is essentially no rules, to get more men convicted with no evidence. And we have to break it down wherever we can find a great example. Gamergate is a great example. So I'm going to look next at how they silence voices that are inconvenient to the narrative.